Many of you will know Rajesh. I've been in office now for a year and a few months, right? And thank you for being here. And I appreciate, and people who may have seen you just walk in will appreciate that you have been detained because there are lots of things happening in London today. We've had a dreadful tragedy in the west of London. And thank you for making the time. You're disadvantaged because you weren't able to hear all of the conversations that our two wonderful speakers have launched. So I'll try and help you moderate. I mean, just to ease our way in, the conversation I'd like us to have partly is how does a great city, London itself, maintain the conditions for entrepreneurs to thrive, which I think we've had a particularly vivid blueprint from Naveen about how entrepreneurs can be audacious and change the world. How can it equally maintain the sort of cultural diversity, the innovativeness that comes from understanding how consumers consume in different ways? It has a wonderful cultural set of industries and so on here. Armand, you've spoken a little bit about that, and I think there is a tagline between the two in some senses here that I'd like to open up. That gives you a little bit of thinking time, Rajesh, and as we go into that, let me just ask all three of you a question, which is slightly along the side of those. How do you stay up to date? Now, there was a tease from Naveen that actually having no serious cognitive domain knowledge is an advantage because you can ask questions that no one else would dare ask. But nevertheless, you're being a little bit cheeky with the question because I know you know a lot. And actually you found out a lot. So we've got a plethora of knowledge hitting us. Armand, you're a serious academic, you stay up to date with the literature, you publish your works, you write wonderful books, but you stay up to date. It's difficult, right? I'm an academic, I know it's difficult.
Yeah,
and Rajesh, let me just say, as a deputy mayor who is responsible for business and digital and huge numbers of things going on in this city, I just want us to see, how do we know, how do we stay up to date? Let me just go around in this order. Naveen first. What do you do to do
So
this?
one of the things is that first of all, you have to have the vocabulary to be able to understand a vast variety of things. So one thing is that I was able to essentially get the foundation of basics of genetics, the basics of artificial intelligence, basics of neuroscience, basic of nanotechnology. And once you have that vocabulary, you are able to build on that. So what I personally do is that every morning I get up pretty early, 4:30 or so, and I spend the first 2 hours going through all the different science magazines in every single subject. And I probably understand 50–60% of it. And that gives me enough understanding, having a basic vocabulary, that this thing is about something they're able to connect, say, microbiome to, say, Parkinson's disease. And the next time I'm looking at some other article, there's a missing piece there that says how diet is able to influence the microbiome. And I'm able to connect the dots together. I say, aha, that means now I'm able to just simply use a diet to solve the Parkinson's disease. So you start to connect the dots together as you're finding these dots. So as you're reading, you start to collect these dots. And sometimes, as soon as you read the missing dot, you can say, now it's available to solve this problem. And to me, having that basic vocabulary allows you to read a lot. Otherwise, you read the stuff and you completely don't understand. And so initially
4:30 in the morning for 2 hours, people.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think one more thing I would say would be to do something that I enjoyed was just go to YouTube and watch the TED Talks and watch the Singularity University talks around all the different subjects. And that gives you a basic understanding of everything.
Thank you. Armand, how do you approach this?
Well, I don't watch TED Talks, but but the answer must be actually not very different from Naveen's answer, except it's not a sort of deliberate recipe of getting up, for 2 hours. It's actually relatively simple. All of us are specialized in a relatively narrow field. Probably the easiest way in which you can keep up to date is to enter a field which doesn't exist, and in which you're making it. And I got to say that's actually why I decided to start studying culture. Previously, I studied worms. There are there's the international worm meetings. I know it sounds obscure, but the international worm meetings, which are held every 2 years in Los Angeles, there's 3,000 to 4,000 worm scientists there. I mean, it's a huge, huge field, right? I mean, there are more scientists for this worm than it has cells. I mean, it's about like, 2 genes for every scientist. I mean, it's like that. So it's in. But culture, if you're the scientific study of culture, well, it's just completely wide open. There's, and of course, there's all sorts of expertise that you need. But I didn't indicate it, and I was ungenerous in doing so, but there's a whole team of collaborators that I've got here, ranging from computer scientists to people in humanities departments, the cultural critics and the art historians and the English professors, and somehow I'm sort of sitting in a kind of an entrepreneurial way, in a small way, like Naveen Jain does, sort of in the middle of those guys doing this thing, right? And that is essentially what we all do. And it's the model for how we keep ahead.
Thank you. Rajesh, we would love to know how you keep up to date with what's going in London, but also the floor's yours for a few minutes to tell us a few more rounded comments about London and its culture and its science and entrepreneurship. But from a personal point of view, how do you stay up to date?
Well, first of all, I would like to say it's a very interesting point you mentioned, and I'd be very pleased, and I think I would tell my mother this as well. But when I was in school, I would not study until the exam day, and on the exam day, I'll find out what book it is, and I'll start by reading the glossary right at the end of the book, and that was very interesting. It was building the vocabulary in a way, because you have to familiarize yourself with the terminology of things, and it expands your knowledge. But really, it's about, we live in the age of internet. We live in the age of information. So you've got data, you've got information, you've got knowledge, and then you've got wisdom. Unfortunately, it's in that order now. So whilst we've got a lot of information in the world, there's lack of wisdom. The more information there is, the less wisdom seems like there is in the world. So that's why knowledge is one thing, but for me, it's about sort of having that compass which gives you direction, how to use the knowledge. It's the application of that knowledge. But hey, I would like to, first of all, I'm not really a politician. I'm an entrepreneur turned politician, so it's I still feel like an entrepreneur.
Good.
Because once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. And I know many of you have taken part in a lot of events in London Tech Week. This is the London Tech Week, and the whole idea of London Tech Week is to showcase the amazing talent that we have in London. Phenomenal talent, amazing entrepreneurs. It's one of the fastest growing sectors in London, and we are showcasing this, and I've got no doubt that this will continue to become bigger and bigger every year. We've had over 300 events, over 50,000 people who are actually participating in the events of London Tech Week. A lot of these people have actually traveled from abroad, a lot of them from Europe. So it's all very exciting. But this also goes to show our fact, something that we've been saying for a long time, and something that London is for a long time, which is our openness. So London is successful because London is open as a city. That is what makes London so successful. If you look at my own story, I came from India 15 years ago in 2001. Then I wanted to do something in public law, and I was very conveniently asked by the mayor 6 days after the Brexit referendum to become deputy mayor of London for business. So London is the city of opportunities. It's the city of dreams, and the biggest strength of London is Londoners and its openness. Over 40% of London's population was born outside of the UK. So it's hugely outward-looking, cosmopolitan, global city. If you look at the tech sector itself, it's grown phenomenally. Almost 53% of London's tech workforce hold foreign passports. It's incredible. I mean, it's a huge sort of carnival of talented people, and on top of that, we've got great universities ourselves who are doing wonderful job of developing more and more talent. We've got more universities than any other city in the world. And I know, people talk about Brexit and all the uncertainty it brings. Surely it does bring uncertainty. But I've got no doubt in my head that London will continue to be the best place in the world to do business, because the foundations of London are so strong. Its openness will continue. It will continue to remain open for business, for investment, for ideas, for entrepreneurs, and for innovation. Because innovation is another thing which is happening in abundance in London right now. London is very well placed to be the innovation capital of the world. And I believe strongly that technology can help solve some of the biggest challenges that are faced by our world today. So there's a big responsibility on the shoulders of entrepreneurs and innovators. Because frankly, and I say this, entrepreneur turned politician, don't leave it up to the politicians, by the way. So it's big responsibility on the shoulders of us, the innovators and the entrepreneurs. And look what we are doing. So just on Monday, the mayor launched this new drive to make London the leading city in smart technologies. Because for me, technology is of any use if it improves the quality of lives of people. Otherwise, what's the point having a great technology? So that angle is very important. And I also believe that technology is a great equalizer. A bunch of bright people just in their garage with a laptop can challenge and are challenging some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies, the big institutions. And the time has come now that there will be more and more equalization on all these levels. So might is right is no longer the case now. Small companies, small entrepreneurs, innovators at all levels can actually challenge the big institution. So I just hope London will continue in that direction, and there will be more and more entrepreneurs. And even post-Brexit, we have seen some phenomenal investments coming in. Facebook is doubling its workforce in London. Google is investing another £1 billion in London, and you've got companies like Snapchat, companies like Square who are setting up offices here. Apple has just taken another 500,000 square feet of office space in Battersea power stations. So all this is vote of confidence in London. So I think after, look, by the way, if you have not guessed, part of my job is to promote London worldwide.
Yeah, we keep going.
Here's the thing, Rajesh, I have a question for you. All the companies you mentioned, there is not one of them that actually originated in London. So why is that?
No, there are a lot of companies.
No, all the ones you mentioned that you're so proud of, is Snapchat, Facebook, every one of them.
No, but that's what makes it even more interesting, that companies from abroad, even they are coming to London. Of course, the ones in London are expanding very rapidly. And we haven't seen any slowdown, by the way, in VC investment flowing into London. Even post-Brexit, the amount of money that's coming in is phenomenal. Some of the companies have got huge amounts of investment, private equity and so on. The equity markets are doing phenomenally well, as you know.
I think Darwin would have liked to come here and study what's going on, Armand.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we've got 40% of Londoners not being born here. We've got companies coming in. We've got companies growing here. It seems like the perfect melting pot. Is that right? I think so.
I couldn't agree more. It was with some delight that I noted that actually all of our last panel speakers, I don't think a single one of them was born in Britain. Am I correct? It sounds like a South African over there, yeah. And there's possibly an American or Canadian. And anyway, a German and a Dutch and a German. I mean, 2037, I hope it's still like that.
Well, we make sure it is.
Yeah.
We just got a few minutes, and I know we've set some challenging thoughts alive, and I saw one or two people indicating that they might want to join in the conversation. So put your hand up if you'd like to do that. Did you want to say something, Mark?
I have a question for Armand. Mark, can you sit here?
Right, if the microphone's working, use it. Yeah.
Mark Horistic, Imperial College. Fascinating talk, Herman. I was thinking all your approaches based on analyzing text data. Can you cope with, geometrical data, CAD models, or kind of sketches to try to understand from other aspects of design?
Yeah. Where do we get the data from? If you got the data, we'll do it. I mean, the limitation is, I'd love to do cars, I'd love to do buildings, I would love to study all culture. It's just a matter of getting the numbers, right? Pop music, you can get it, because you can get, 1 million songs on your hard drive, if you want them. But designs are more difficult, and but that is where the whole new science should come from, absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Hi. Naveen, in response to a particular question you mentioned about the number of industries that are going to be obsolete as a result of AI and automation, I think you mentioned accounting, legal, doctors. A lot of people are thinking about the future of work and the replacement of, or rather the fact that a lot of knowledge workers are going to be obsolete. And there are several social aspects to it. At one end of the spectrum being...
Say who you are and where you're from.
Manish Naik from BP.
Great, thanks.
There's some social aspects to it. One end of the spectrum being universal basic income, and we are all free to play frisbees all throughout the day. And the other end of the spectrum is complete social inequality. What I've not heard or read enough about, and it's probably difficult to tell, is AI sort of the last innovation, and if not, what are the jobs of the future?
I think I'll ask all the panelists to have a crack at that question, but Naveen, you go first.
Okay. Well, first of all, anytime there is a new technology, remember these same questions were asked when the computers first came out. My God, everything is going to be obsolete. We'll never have a job. And today, the 50% of the jobs that exist today didn't exist 20 years ago. So the new types of jobs are being created all the time as the technology moves along. But I think, in terms of the solution to the problems, when you essentially have the lot of the current things that we are doing, let's assume that everything becomes in so much abundance that we have essentially becomes like oxygen. That means it becomes free. What if the food was the new oxygen? What if the energy was the new oxygen? That means all the things that we value actually becomes demonetized down to zero, and they become free. The idea is, what would people do? The answer is not the universal basic income, because people have dignity. Giving them money for nothing takes away their dignity. And I don't think anyone should ever take away somebody's dignity. So allowing them to be creative, allowing them to really do the things they could not do before. And that's what really happens, is that when you take away the need to earn money to do the work, they work only to earn money, that should never happen. In fact, I would argue any entrepreneur who starts a company to make money never ends up making it. Making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you'll never get it. You just enjoy the process.
Right, remember that. Armand, do you want to follow in that vein? You've given us you gave us
You gave us sex, I gave you orgasm.
You gave us sex a couple of times. Come on.
No, it's hard. It's a little hard to follow it up. But I more or less. Yeah, I agree with Naveen here. It's all about the process. But the process is going to be sort of really fun. I don't think we have to, so joking aside, so do we have to worry about the AIs taking away and busting the creatives, right? I mean, that is sort of the ultimate, the ultimate redoubt. And the answer to that, I think, is actually not very, very soon. I mean, that's a bit of a cautious statement, and it is for the reasons that I suggested, that you can teach computers to do stuff that's already been done, but really taking those bold decisions, those paradigm-busting songs, ideas, that's still going to be the province of humans for at least a good long while. And here, I gotta say, I don't disagree with Naveen at all. I was just focused on a somewhat different part of the economy. Yeah.
Okay, so Rajesh, how do you view this AI issue? in
I
London?
think it's always very easy to overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and underestimate the impact of technology in the long run. And sometimes we can, in the short term, easily exaggerate the impact of technology. But having said that, we are seeing the whole technology, all the disruption that is taking place in all different industries. If you look at the US, in 29 states out of 50, the biggest employment is truck driving. And with all the automated, and I own a Tesla, by the way, with an autopilot. If with all the automated driving, all these things all the jobs are gonna change. See, up until 20 years ago, 30 years ago, so technology moves quite fast. Right behind that is consumer behavior, and right behind that is government regulators. So that in that order generally. But recently, consumer behavior is catching up. Earlier, there was a big gap between the technology that was available, but the consumer adoption was slow. In a way, so it regulated technological changes. But now consumer adoption is so quick that in a way, it's adopting technology very, very quickly, and that's what is, in a way, opening up new challenges. And that's why the answer to that is skills, a solid skills program. Like you said, whenever there is a new technology, it destroys a lot of jobs, but it creates a lot of new opportunities and a lot of jobs. So the question is whether our workforce is ready for those new jobs or not.
Another insight on this is that computing reduced the cost of calculation and processing information. What is AI doing? It's reducing the cost of gaining insights themselves, and perhaps even reducing the cost of being predictive. And phenomenal things can happen. We might be able to liberate people into new jobs that we haven't thought of here. And I think that's the upside that we need to play with. And London's in a good place for that. We need a bit more connectivity in our infrastructure. We need to have a few more smart things happening. But we've got the entrepreneurs. We've got a good digital sector. We've got the universities. We need to start to think, how are we going to use insight? And what's the economy around insight? Okay.
And I think the only other thing I can add, Rajesh, I think what you said is absolutely perfect. It is not between human versus the AI. It is the AI plus the human, really the AI augmenting humanity to allow it to do the thing that they could not do before. That means essentially it gives them the things they don't have to worry about. Human mind cannot process all that information. So why not let the computers and AI give them that knowledge, and they are able to then use their knowledge to be able to make the decisions. And I think that is really where the world is going to be heading. It's a human plus AI that's going to be more powerful than human versus AI.
I've got time for one last question, comment, if it's a quick one. Yeah, at the back there.
From TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. Quick question in terms of philosophy. So, is there a space for philosophy, especially given that it has, been on a decline for some time? Technology and science taking over rather than philosophy. Given everything that we heard today, AI, jobs, and all of that. Is there a space for philosophy?
Okay, let me start with Rajesh on this one, and then I'll ask Naveen and finish off with Armand.
I think philosophy, what I said, it's actually linked to that. The word philosophy comes from the word Sophia, which means wisdom, which is what I was saying earlier on, that while the knowledge and information is increasing, the wisdom is decreasing. Philosophy is that moral compass that will help for us to have that direction, because you can have all the great technology in the world, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all sorts of things. But philosophy is those ethics, the right and the wrong. And we are seeing what's happening in the political world right now. There are big changes with all the technology and everything else. There are big changes because there are people who feel left out. There are people who are in two jobs sometimes, but they are still struggling to make ends meet. So the philosophy should be our sort of moral compass, is the guiding force that should drive everything else. So, and you know what? Ultimately, all scientists, when they get to a certain level, they become philosophers, don't they? So science and philosophy are not two separate things. In fact, philosophy is the ultimate of science.
Right. Naveen?
Well, not quite sure, to be honest with you, how to answer your question, because to me, the philosophy in the short term is really the mindset of humanity as an aggregate of what they believe. And over time, the things constantly change. So what you're looking at the wisdom of the crowd, and that can easily be done in the AI. I mean, in the long term, you will obviously have machines that's going to be able to think like humans. In fact, one would argue that in the next 20 years to 2037, close to that, not only the machines will become as powerful as the individual humans, in the next 10 years after that, they will be more powerful than all brains of all humanity combined. And then you will start to wonder, what does humans really stand for, right? And so who are we? And to some extent, who are we is really not our genetics. We are really a microbial ecosystem, so we are simply a container for the ecosystem, the organisms in our gut anyway. So yes, we can be very proud of ourselves, but we're really not very unique.
Thank you. Armand?
Well, I don't think I've much to add to both those very wise answers, except this, to give a little bit of historical perspective. So philosophy has been the traditional domain of all knowledge, and it is true that science has encroached upon it in all ways. What was once social philosophy is now sociology, what was once natural philosophy is now natural science, and so on. And so the domain of philosophy is narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. But I believe that there's one domain, and it is precisely the one to which Rajesh alluded, that science doesn't have much to say, and I'm not sure it can, namely that is to say, the question of what is good. It is the very first question of philosophy, the one that Socrates asked. What does it mean to be good? And that's a question about values. And it is one we all answer for ourselves, but for which, and there are moral philosophies, but I'm not sure there is a science of goodness.
That is almost the right note to leave this discussion on. But it's really up there in terms of thoughts, and I'm going to bring you back down to ground because we're going to have a drink in a minute and ask each of you to give us 1 or 2 sentences on what London might be like in 2037, and it can come from any of the angles that we've heard. So, Naveen, you've already said one thing, you can't repeat it.
No, so I'm just simply saying is that London has a tremendous potential, and if you go back and look at, if we follow the basics of attracting the best and the brightest, giving them the opportunity to succeed, and most importantly, celebrating their success. If we do that, it is going to be the greatest city, and if we don't do that, I think it's going to be destroyed.
Armand?
I'm a huge London booster. I mean, actually, I put Rajesh to shame.
Good answer, good answer.
You know, in many ways. I don't have to say, well, that I can only, let me just say, I hope that the way in which I've seen London transformed in the 20 years that I've been here, since the city welcomed me, I have seen it transform, and from a national capital, a fairly grubby one, into this golden city, this Athens of our age. And I hope that 20 years from now, it will still be that way. If it's up to London, it will be. But I can only hope that it is true. Yeah?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. London, our vision for London is to make it the city, the best city in the world in which to visit, whether you're here to visit, whether you're here to live, whether you're here to work, whether you're here to set up a business, grow the business, expand. If you are into culture and music and entertainment, this is the place to be. If you are in sports, this is the place to be. And it's a world leader. But you know what? Beyond all of that, I want a city where everyone is happy. I think that's the ultimate, and how do you make people happy? So there's numerous things, but this is why smart technologies are very important. So improving the quality of life, lives of people. Mental health is a challenge for all of us around the world. in the UK and everywhere else, stress at workplaces, things like that. So it's about good growth, and that is one of the things actually we are working on, talking about not just economic growth, but a good growth. And what does good growth mean is improving the quality of life of citizens, and ultimately so that they are happier, and that's where I would like to see London to be.
Thank you. And if I'm allowed just one sentence as the chair, well, I love the happiness. I think going hand in hand with that is playfulness. And indeed, if we can be happy and play, we'll probably develop all the ideas we need to keep this wonderful city in good shape. I'd like to thank Naveen, coming over from Seattle, inspiring us and challenging us. Armand, wonderful insights into culture. And Rajesh, thank you so much for being our Deputy Mayor, and please stay as our Deputy Mayor, although you're an entrepreneur at heart, and stay an entrepreneur at heart as well. Thank you. And thank you all of you for being here today. Thank you.